If that was the case, then Dollar General would be the number one store in the world.
This is one that a lot of people will undervalue, in my opinion, because they're like, well, yeah, I'm already onboarding them. I'm already sending them to the microsite. So now I just remind them it's today. Nope, it's not enough.
When you can make 10 times more money on the same amount of traffic sources, it just makes sense.
Click, take action. Click, take action. Click,
take action.
Welcome to Marketing from the Edge podcast. I'm Cody Alexander. I've directly generated over $200 million in net revenue over the last 5 years through innovative marketing and a numbers-first strategy. Joined with me is my dad. John Alexander has become the go-to expert in the direct marketing field, generating over $1.5 billion in revenue over the last 5 years. Sought by both board of directors and nine-figure businesses, he is an owner/founder of Centurion Publishing and is on the journey of growing this brand new business from 0 to 100 million in annual revenue. Today, we're going to reveal our 7-step framework that we've used to build a business that makes you rich. This framework is our secret to ethically 10xing your next product launch without spending a truckload of money on advertising. If you want a shortcut to getting your audience excited about what you're doing next and begging you to let them have access to your next product, this episode's for you. You know, there's a difference between a VSL and a launch.
Yeah, and you could use the word launch, you could use the word webinar. Like some guys are like, hey, if it's not live, it's not a webinar. But there's all kinds of variations. People have all kinds of different things that they want to call it or say it. But in essence, we'll use two simple ones, right? We'll call it a VSL or we'll call it a launch. And it doesn't matter if you're launching a new product or launching an old product again, right? Like it's a webinar.
The reason why I use the term launch is a lot of it is grounded on the product launch formula. Like a lot of things kind of iterated from that.
I say we have a bastardized version of the product launch formula, right?
Like iterated, bastardized, whatever term. The point is, like, you take a good idea, you make it work for you, and then you try to make it better.
Make a good idea and destroy it.
Hey, I mean, if it was destroying it, it probably wouldn't make it so much money. But, you know, when I think of the term launch, right, I use a 7-step framework to describe it to my team, right?
Walk us through that, because I don't use that same framework.
It's a lot easier on a whiteboard. But the first thing, top of funnel, is like you have all your lead sources, everywhere you're driving traffic from, right? Then you have your opt-in page, everywhere you're driving traffic to. And that's like making a date, right? You're saying, hey, we have this exciting idea. We're going to reveal it to you on said date. Here's a place to register. And then below that, here's all the reasons why you should attend. Here's who's going to be on there and why they're qualified.
The landing page, basically.
Right. It's an opt-in page. But, you know, it's a squeeze page to get them excited for your date.
Okay.
So show up. So top of funnel, everywhere you're getting traffic from, then it's where do you want them to go, right? And you're driving them to the landing page. Then from there, you have some form of onboarding. Right? And you have some way that you're trying to get them to stay engaged. And it's like, great, now that you're excited about said idea, here's a bunch of interesting information that you may not have known about. And it can be teasers, it can be reports. There's some form of context you're trying to convey to the end user. So when they show up on that day, they're informed. Right. And you're bridging the gap between here's everything you need to know from your place of ignorance, and not in a negative way, but like they don't even know what they don't know. Right.
They didn't know anything about it beforehand.
Right. You inform them. And then number 4 is, you know, a microsite is what it is. And this one's like textbook out of product launch formula. Right. And the whole thing is it's a portal where they can go and access all this information. And there's a lot of ways you can do it, whether like it unlocks over time or it's just a bit like.
Actually, we call them mini sites, right? You guys call them microsites.
Yeah, they're a lot of ideas. Smaller.
Yeah. You know, having done 3 to 4 webinars a month for 7 years in a row, I actually have a lot of ideas around mini sites and what I believe is a good layout, because you're right. Like, I love this framework. I've never thought about it like this, but you're absolutely right. You have to take people through these steps. Right? Where are you going to get your traffic from? Where are you going to drive it to? And that page has its own metrics, your own things. You know whether we're getting the right traffic sources, whether the message is resonating or not. Right now, you have your engagement. Right, you called it onboarding.
Yeah.
Right, you have that means of when somebody signs up on Friday, getting them excited all the way to next Thursday.
Right.
Right, and keeping them involved.
The 7-day cycle.
Yeah, I use 6-day cycles.
Yeah.
But you're using 7-day cycles right now.
But it's an arbitrary number,
And
right?
I agree. Like that was one of the things we were talking about on the planning on this, right? The reality is that 6 or 7 really depends on your list.
We literally just did
doing.
one that was 3 days, right? And
So I've done them as small as 2 days.
Yeah.
It depends on so many factors. And so it's not about, there's no magic like 7.6 days and 32.7 emails. And
that's why I break it out like this, is because
I like
some
it.
people get focused on what, right? Each of these serves a purpose. You need to go find the right source. You need to drive them to a page that gets them excited about the opportunity. You need to provide context so they show up with the right amount of information to make a decision that day. The microsite's goal is really about having a hub.
Yeah.
Right? It's somewhere you can drive them every time. Click. You're trying to create the behavior you want to see on the day of.
Yeah. Our microsite, we actually use the URL that we were going to do the event, but it's basically training them that this is where they go to consume the information. And then this is where they'll go for the event.
Well, and it helps build the domain's reputation, so you get a lot of unintended benefits. But, the point of that microsite is to have a place where you are trying to create the behavior you want to see on the day of the event. Click, take action. Click, take action. Click,
take action.
So number 5 is the day of the event. And this is one that a lot of people will undervalue, in my opinion, because they're like, well, yeah, I'm already onboarding them. I'm already sending them to the microsite. So now I just remind them it's today. Nope. It's not enough. It's because you have to think about, you're not just competing to get them to show up. You're competing with everything else going on that day, with their wife asking them to do a honey-do list item, with whatever just happened at work, with that beer that's been sitting in the fridge they've wanted to drink all day, like whatever.
The weather, the news cycle, everything.
You're competing with everything. That event of day of has to be the most intentional part of this funnel, because otherwise they won't show up. And then what was the point of doing anything else? So that one's like pretty direct. Obviously, like we said, each of these almost deserves its own episode.
Yeah,
right?
and at some point we probably will do an individual episode on some of these. But I agree. I think the one thing I've seen where this breaks down the most is you reach the day and people are like, all right, we've already done all the work to get them. They will show up tonight. And that's making a huge assumption.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the same thing as you make an appointment early on with your doctor. He sends you a couple of reminders and then it's like, oh, well, it's the day of course, they already remember all of it, right? There's a reason why people miss appointments. There's a reason why there's an appointment cancellation fee and a missed appointment fee, is because so many other things are going on in life.
Half the time you show up and people are like, I don't even remember what this was for.
Exactly.
And they could have clicked the link yesterday and consumed information. And that day, they're like, what's this for?
Because like you said, it's competing. And so when days get hijacked, you go to the highest, most important things you got to deal with. And even if that was super high and you made an appointment and you were ready to go yesterday, it may just fall a little further today. And you have to re-engage them or re-excite them to get them to pull it back up above all the other stuff that they're doing.
Exactly. So then number 6, this one's pretty obvious, but it's the event itself, right? It's the event page. It's whether you're doing a live event or a pre-recorded or it's an interview or solo or whatever it may be, right? The event itself, the page needs to be intentional.
Yep.
The event needs to be intentional. And then the call to actions, like on the page, hey, the button pop. You really need to be mindful that the button pop is intentional. It's not like, oh, well, we'll just leave the button on the whole time. Probably not a good idea. Well, we should be there around an hour. Probably not good enough, because what happens if at 55 minutes you tell everyone to click the button and it's not there?
Yeah, exactly.
Either you don't have enough phone sales guys to cover that much people calling in going, I don't see a button. And it turns into how could you make this, like, now it's triage instead of excitement. So the event itself is where you make the money, right? That is, like I said, now that they've showed up, great. You're 50% of the way there because they haven't pulled out their wallet yet. So you have to do everything right.
And I love what you were saying earlier on the event itself. You use the word intentional. I use the word congruent, right? So what happens is that if they're going through and you've got a microsite that looks a certain way, messaging that looks a certain way, and things that look a certain way, then all of a sudden you show up on a page and the color scheme's different.
Yeah.
The host, I always laugh and joke about this, where the realtor at 50 years old has her 35-year-old picture.
Yeah.
And you show up at the house, you're like, that's not who's on the picture, right? Like, it happens. These guys are using old bios and old pictures, and all of a sudden, wait, that's not the guy, right? It might be the first time they're introduced to the host itself. And you're like, holy shit, like, where'd this guy come from? Well, I didn't know anything about him. So that congruence factor is such a huge, like, that's how you get people down the slide to buy.
Yeah. And that goes back to onboarding in the microsite,
like
right?
You said, being intentional on all your steps.
Right. It's like, hey, if they show up and they don't believe you're an authority figure, well, now you have to do all of that heavy lifting on the event.
Exactly.
But if you can try to get as much of that out of the way before the event even starts, they show up ready to listen to you and not, why should I listen to you?
Let's hit point number 7 first.
So 7 is post-campaign, right? Because in my experience, half the money's made on the event and half the money's made after. And that's not a perfect science, but that tells you how much is up for grabs by being smart about follow-up communication.
Exactly. Follow-up communication. It's typically people don't buy for one of several reasons. And sometimes it's just simply they just didn't get one of their questions answered.
Yep.
And you follow up communication and you find out what those questions are. You can survey out to them. There's all kinds of things. Your sales guys can call them, right? There's 1,000 ways you can find out why they didn't buy, as well as just send an email saying, hey, we noticed you're on the event and you didn't take advantage of it. Would you mind sharing why?
Yeah.
And when you start to understand that, we had an event in the financial publishing space. We talked all about the exciting idea and how we were going to get them at the right price. And we just literally forgot to mention that we're also going to help them exit the position. And so sales were down and we're like, what the hell is going on? And we found out really quickly, holy crap, like people were like, yeah, great, you're going to get me in, but then I'm relying on my own to get out, right? So we quickly shot a video, sent it out to the file, like, hey, one thing we're getting a lot of questions of, and you answer that question, all of a sudden numbers go back up.
Yeah.
Because they weren't buying because they couldn't afford it, which is the first thing everybody thinks.
Right.
But that's number 7 on the list of why people don't buy.
People use it's too expensive as a cop-out.
Yeah, exactly.
For most people, time is their most valuable thing.
Yep.
For most people, not, when you're younger, you can spare a little more. But point is, if they were willing to stop what they were doing on whatever lead source they were on, to go and look at a page and read it and go, yeah, that might be worth showing up to and opting in, and then click in your emails to get all of that context, then to bother whatever happened during that day to still show up to your event, to watch the event. They went through all of that investment. Chances are it's too expensive is number 3.
Yeah.
Right? For some people, that's certainly the case, but by and large, it's not like why most.
Because if that was the case, then Dollar General would be the number 1 store in the world. You wouldn't go anywhere else because you go to Dollar General because you can buy the same thing for $1.
Yeah, because you just go to Walmart.
Exactly, right? Yes, low cost, but only about 30% of society actually price shops. People misunderstand all that stuff, and it's an easy cop-out. They're like, oh, they can't afford it, right? Or lead suck. Like,
yeah. Why doesn't everyone go to the grocery store with a coupon book?
Yeah, why are we all driving Chevy Cruises?
Because people value their time more than their money, generally.
Well, one thing I wanted to touch on, because I think that's an outstanding framework. We were talking a little bit earlier about why, right? We were talking about the event itself and being intentional and congruent. So why should you do this stuff in the first place? And it comes down to, number 1, it makes you more money, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's why you should do it. But to kind of understand that concept is that typically if you release a video sales letter out to your file, you're going to get a certain percent return, right? A certain percentage of people will stop doing what they're doing. They'll watch your video, they'll consume the information, and they'll go out and make a purchase. Lots of businesses were entirely made off of that. When Jeff Walker kind of built this product launch formula, the whole point was to do exactly what you said, was to semi-pre-sell them before the event ever occurred, right?
Right.
They get to know you, they get to like you, they get to trust you, right? They get engaged, they understand who the host is. You're intentional on all the steps, because when you do it correctly, you'll see at least a 10 times return on a launch or a webinar versus a regular VSL.
Well, think about it. Before that, you would have the lead source, the opt-in, and then the event would be right immediately.
If not at the same time as the opt-in, because some people just take the lead source and drive them straight to the the video.
And that worked. I'm not discounting it, but the point is like all of those people where you didn't have a chance to build the context, like you said, know, like, trust, right? And then all of the people who like you didn't answer the question that was like, yes, I should attend this.
Yeah, exactly.
Like hit that pain point is like, I really need this. Because that's what it takes for most people. You know, imagine a handful of people maybe showed up and their spouse made a comment about how they've put on weight. And they immediately look up how to get fit. And they opt in and they watch an event and they buy. But that's not the majority of people.
Yeah, most people aren't going out searching for whatever you have to sell them.
Exactly, right?
They're going about their day.
You're disrupting what is going on. You're tapping into a conversation they're having in their mind. And the longer you can be a part of that conversation, the more likely you are to be the solution.
Exactly, because that's what people are after, right? We go through all this stuff, and lots of people are like, oh, well, I'm selling a product, or I'm selling a widget, or I'm selling this, or I'm selling an idea. You're selling a solution, right? Ultimately, you're trying to satisfy a need. And what they've decided, they've made everybody, and they do this unintentionally, right? Subconsciously or consciously, they made a value proposition. Their value proposition is what I have in my wallet versus what you're asking for, what you said I'm going to get. It matches, and I'm willing to either pull the trigger or not.
Yeah.
Right? This is what a Mercedes is. When it lines up, great. You pull the trigger and you buy a Mercedes. When it doesn't, you go down and buy a Chevy Cruze, right? Everybody's got that value proposition. And depending on what you're asking for them and all kinds of things changes that value proposition. But at its core basic, that's what you're doing. They're trading their money because they think what you're giving them is more valuable than what they have.
And going back to the why too is it's like, that's the reason why it's not, oh, it's 7 days. It's always 7 days. It's always 6, right? The whole point is it's as long as it is to do one of the three things we've talked about, either to give them the context, to give them the valuable information. If you don't have a lot of valuable information to give them before the event, people know bloat.
Exactly.
And so like when you just drag it out,
it's not 3 videos.
Right.
It's 3 pieces of content. If you don't have 3 pieces of content, make it 2.
However long it takes to provide the context, to provide value and build the relationship. So when they show up, they know you, they like you because you're giving them value, and they trust you because you've built a relationship.
Exactly.
And whatever that time frame is for you, that's why you do those steps. And that's what leads you to the day of the event itself, and the post campaign.
I think that's awesome. And at some point we will do extra videos, especially on the post campaign, because I know you got some awesome things about what we can do during a post campaign to ramp up that percentage. But for now, I think that's a good spot to kind of cut this launch idea and this launch concept and what we're doing and why we're doing it. And hopefully we kind of sold you on the why a little bit, but if not, definitely give us a comment and let us know. Give us the feedback, because if you didn't, like, how else are we going to know?
Yeah. And I genuinely believe that if you are not doing this in your business, if you don't have steps 3 and 4, which is onboarding for engagement, and Microsite, which is incentivizing the behavior that you want them to use in the future, you are leaving money on the table.
I agree. And let me just give one more thing on that when most copywriters that I've talked to spend 95% of their time on the event itself and very little time on the engagement sequence and the opt-in page.
Right.
And really, at the end of the day, those two, if you can't get them to opt in and then you can't get them to engage, it doesn't matter. You can have the greatest webinar in the world and you'll be seen by 3 people.
Yep.
Right. Now, I'm not saying you should have a shitty webinar, but give each of the steps due notice and understand they're all individual steps. The point of the lead is to get them to the opt-in. Point of the opt-in is to get them to engage. Point of engagement is to get them over into the microsite. The point of the microsite is to ensure that you've separated off your event day of so they actually attend.
Yeah.
Right. Then your post campaign.
Yeah. We talk a lot about speed to market, right? And if all you wanted was speed to market, you'd only do the lead source, the opt-in, and the event. But you can make a lot more money by following an intentional path.
My experience is your conversion rate is 10x using this versus just going straight to speed to market. And when you can make 10 times more money on the same amount of traffic sources, it just makes sense.
Yep.
Why wouldn't you add this in? I'm not saying you should do this all the time. It is an event, but some people do daily webinars. It works just fine.
Well, there's a place for everything, but if you're not doing this in your business, here's why you should do it. And if you are doing it in your business, hopefully here's a way to do it a little bit better and make a little bit more money.
And stay with us, and we'll go through each of these as individual episodes because they do all stand alone.
Yeah.
And neither one's important than the other.
We have strong opinions on what we would do differently to make more money.
Exactly. And things that have evolved and changed over us after doing hundreds and hundreds of these things. You have to change things up. And what we did in 2017 or 2021 or 2022 are not what we're doing here today. And it's not what we'll be doing in the future. I guarantee it.
2017, 2015. I mean, you could go as far back in time as you want. Yeah. It's always different from what it was.
Okay. Awesome. We'll see you on the next episode.
Good luck out there. Go make some money. You've been listening to Marketing from the Edge podcast. If you want to hear more of our thoughts every week, visit marketingedgepod.com. We'll share more of our very best lessons, thoughts, strategies for growing a business, as well as some personal stories here from the edge of the world. Invest a couple minutes of your morning and we'll give you the blueprint to growing your business from where it's at today to where you want it to be. That's marketingedgepod.com. If you want to reach out to us directly, feel free to email Cody@marketingedgepod.com and you might get a surprise bonus. Next week, we're going to discuss how to find the hidden piles of money in your business. I accidentally asked my dad a question that led to an amazing 30-minute conversation that shows you exactly how. If you want to figure out how to handle too much opportunity, what to do when you're at a crossroads of what direction to take the business, or you just want a step-by-step guide to generating more revenue year after year, that's exactly what you can expect in next week's episode. Stay tuned.